Cultivating Respect for Intellectual Property. A book I would highly recommend for more on this topic is Copyright Clarity by Renee Hobbs, How Fair Use Supports Digital Learning. In this presentation, we'll go through these 5 parts: intellectual property, copyright, fair use, transformativeness, and Creative Commons. First, we'll begin with intellectual property. Intellectual property refers to creations of the mind, includes inventions, literary and artistic arts, designs, symbols, names, and images used in commerce. Intellectual property is more than just copyright. It includes laws about patents, copyright, and trademark. It's important when we think about this that we consider not just the law as it's written exactly, precisely, but that we consider the spirit of the law. From the Christian faith, we know some expectations. The 7th commandment says, "You shall not steal." In Luther's Small Catechism, he explains it this way. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we do not take our neighbor's money or possessions or get them in any dishonest way, but help him to improve and protect his possessions and income. In Luther's Large Catechism, he goes a little deeper and says, thus, with a happy conscience, you can enjoy 100 times more than you could scrape together by perfidy and injustice. Think about that. With information exploding everywhere, options for resources online, we literally have not just hundreds, but thousands, millions times more things that we can share that we otherwise could not produce on our own. More in the 9th commandment, which is, "You shall not covet." Luther explains, what does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we do not scheme to get our neighbor's inheritance or house, or get it in a way which only appears right, but help and be of service to him in keeping it. This is the responsibility we have to our neighbor. More, in Luther's Large Catechism, we are to fear and love God so that we do not try to trick our neighbors out of their inheritance or property, or try to get it for ourselves by claiming to have a legal right to it and the like, but instead be of help and service to them in keeping what is theirs. But here it is also forbidden to entice anything away from your neighbor, even though in the eyes of the world you could do it honorably, without accusation or blame for fraudulent gain. I guess that's so much for the excuse that, well, everyone else is downloading it. And we know from Mark 12, 28, 31, maybe the best way to speak of the spirit of the law, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. When we understand that our creations and those of others are property, intellectual property that is owned, we then recognize and accept our responsibility to protect others' creations and to seek to guard the benefits of ownership. So let's move on to copyright. What is copyright? Copyright is a form of protection given to the authors or creators of original works of authorship, including literary, dramatic, musical, artistic, and other intellectual works. So it's a form of protection for the benefit of the creator or the author of works. What this means is that as the author of the work, you alone have the right automatically to do any of the following, or to let others to do any of the following. Only you can make copies of your work. Only you, the author or creator, can distribute copies of your work. Only you can perform your work publicly, such as for plays, films, dances, or music. Only you can display your work publicly, such as for artwork. Only you can make derivative works, modifying, adapting, putting it to other use, translating the work to another medium. By law, then, it is illegal to do any of these without permission from the author or the creator. Make copies, distribute copies, perform publicly, display publicly, and make derivative works. But there are some exceptions and limitations, and this is where it gets complicated for educators. So let's talk about fair use. Fair use is one limitation of copyright. By limitation, I mean copyright only goes so far to protect the rights of the author and creators, but not too far that it keeps the rest of us from having fair use of their work. Fair use is the part of copyright law that enables people to make legal use of copyrighted materials without payment or permission under some circumstances. It's especially for uses related to broad and important social goals, related to the development of innovation and the spread of knowledge, including teaching and learning, scholarship, news reporting, or criticism and commentary. There's a 4-point test. If you would ever be challenged in a court of law, you would have to answer to these 4 points, and the answers are not black and white, and the judge's decision would not be black and white. It depends. Depends on the purpose of your use, whether it is a fair use or not. Depends on the nature of the copyrighted work. Is it something that is possibly fair to copy and use? Depends on the amount used, which is interesting. There is no test that the courts have made or has been put into law that says how much you can use. There are individual court cases that have been settled by agreeing to how much can be used, but those only apply to those cases specifically. In general, there is no specified amount, a percent, a size that is fair use. You would have to argue before the judge that the amount you used was fair. An example would be a photograph. It's difficult to say I'll only use the portion of the photograph that I'm using, that I need. You often would need the full photograph for it to make any sense. And the fourth test is the market impact. Does it impact the creator or the author's ability to make money, to make a profit? And there's another exception, and this is one that has more recently been invited by the courts and successfully argued by those who wish to use copyright materials without permission and without payment: transformativeness. There are 2 questions that prove transformativeness. Did the unlicensed use transform the material taken from the copyrighted work by using it for a different purpose than that of the original? Or did it just repeat the work for the same intent and value as the original? The second question to ask to test transformativeness is, was the material taken appropriate in kind and amount, considering the nature of the copyrighted work and of the use? I'm going to go back to the first question for a moment. There is an interesting case that proved favorably for the user of copyright information. It was the case of a book publisher who was creating a book about artifacts from concerts from the music world, like concert posters, concert tickets, and other memorabilia. And the book was supposed to showcase the variety of artifacts that have been kept over the years from different events. The publisher wanted to use a ticket stub from a particular important, famous concert. And so they published a picture of that ticket stub in their book, and they were challenged by copyright. In the end, it was ruled that they were using that for a transformative purpose. It was copyrighted, but transformative nature of their work allowed them to use it without permission and without repayment. An example for the classroom would be if you assign students to go and examine the photographic works of a famous photographer. If they would then go and gather some of their photographs and copy them into a PowerPoint or onto a web page and show that publicly, well, that would most likely not be fair use, because all they've done is taken the photographer's works and put them into their own way to display it. However, a transformative work might be if you ask them to compare the works of two photographers. They might find different examples from different photographers, bring them together into their published work, and transform it by making comparisons and contrasts, or expanding on it and making connections to other photographers. That would be transformative. And it would be legal under fair use. Think about this. Isn't this what we want our students to be and to do today? To be consumers, to be creators, to transform? We talk about the 4 C's, about communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. This is what our students need to strive to be. Create, transform information, not just reuse it. It's a great goal to have for our students, to encourage them to be transformative and thereby be legal in their use of other people's works. Creative Commons, an easy way to grant and to receive permission. Creative Commons is a global nonprofit organization that enables sharing and reuse of creativity and knowledge through the provision of free legal tools. The organization has hired the lawyers and written up the legal language so that you may benefit. In fact, who does benefit from Creative Commons? Well, both authors and users. Creative Commons offers licensing options that are not specified by copyright, yet while abiding by copyright. So according to copyright, you basically have 2 choices: all rights reserved, or works designated as public domain after a certain number of years. Public domain means freely available to all for all uses. There is no real middle ground of some rights reserved in copyright law. And that's where Creative Commons steps in. Creative Commons sets up a number of different licensing options and backs them with the legal language so that they are abiding by copyright law. One license is called the attribution license. It's symboled like this with a BY for by the author. According to this license, all that's required of a user of this work that's labeled with this license is that you attribute the authorship. Or there's a license for attribution share alike, CC BY SA, meaning as long as you attribute it to the original author and share it in the same way that the original author did, you are free to use it. Or there's the attribution no derivatives, which limits the license so that as long as you attribute it, you may use it, but you can't make any modifications to it. You can't Photoshop it, for example. Another license you could assign to your work is the attribution non-commercial, meaning as long as you attribute it, that's fine, but you can't use it to make money. Or a work could be shared as an attribution non-commercial share-like license. You see a building here. Or attribution non-commercial no derivatives. It's the author or the creator's choice which license they want to assign to their work in order to give other people access, permission to use their work and still be abiding by copyright. These are just some examples of platforms who give their users the option of licensing works with Creative Commons licenses. Flickr is one of my favorites. I'm going to show you how to search in Flickr for works that are marked with a Creative Commons license that tells you exactly what you have permission to do with it. So I'm in Flickr now. I'm going to click to search for a photo of a skyscraper. Before I get too excited about what I see, I want to know that the ones I'm looking at are ones that I have permission to use. So I'm going to go to any license and say all Creative Commons licenses. And I got so many to look at. I like this one over here, New York City skyscrapers. So I'm going to click on that. So I can tell from this that if a person named Kevin Jarrett uploaded this in July 2012, he's a pro, must be good, it looks good. And it's been viewed by 6,000 people. I can tell when it was taken, and it's marked with some rights reserved. What does that mean? Well, I'm going to click on that. It says it has a license of attribution, and it's just the attribution license, the BY. It tells me you are free to copy and redistribute the material in any medium or format. And I may even edit, adapt it, remix, transform, build on it for any purpose, even commercially. How cool is that? This photographer wants other people to use his work. Back to the original picture here. How do I use this? Over on the right side is a download button. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to view all sizes. So this author has decided to make his photo available in these sizes. Many choices. How do I make use of this? Well, a couple things to do here. One, right here is a license statement that includes hyperlinks to explain what the license is. So if I'm going to use this photo in a PowerPoint, for example, I want to copy this information here and paste it maybe below the photo. That way they know who created this. That takes care of the attribution part of the license. If they would click then in my PowerPoint on this phrase here, it's hyperlinked to the explanation of the license like you just saw. So I want to copy that and save that with this photo. Secondly, I want the picture. How do I get the picture? I choose a size, and if I do a right click on it, I can copy the link address. That also should be with my picture wherever I publicly display it. That's the web address that someone else could click on to come back here. It really wouldn't be right to just send it back to this person's Flickr page with all his maybe hundreds of photos here, maybe thousands. I really should direct someone back to where I found this image exactly. And then secondly, I would click on this link and download the photo and save it to my drive, and then I can use it. Flickr is so cool because it offers millions of photos that are marked with Creative Commons licenses of all varieties that make it very clear the permissions allowed by the creator. But it's not just we who benefit from this. It's both authors and users benefit because the licenses make clear what the use is. Now that I see how other people have marked it, I want to know how I can mark my own creative works, maybe my lesson plans or my lesson resources. I want to be able to mark them with CC licenses because honestly, it's a bit of an honor for someone else to use my work. So here's how you can do it. Creative Commons has a simple website, creativecommons.org/choose. When I have created something that I want to make sure the world knows is mine and yet specify to the world how they might use it, what permissions I grant, I go to creativecommons.org/choose. I'll end up at a page that looks somewhat like this on the right. I can make choices, allow adaptations of your work to be shared. I can say, yes, I want it to be shared. I can say, no, I don't want it to be shared. Or I can say yes as long as others share alike. By the way, all Creative Commons licenses require attribution. There is not a license without attribution. Anytime we use anybody's work, whether it's under copyright law, fair use, Creative Commons, doesn't matter, we need to attribute it. That's taking care of our neighbor, protecting their work, put their name on it. You also can mark whether it's for commercial use or not. Do you want to allow people to make money with your image or your work or not? As you click on the yes and no's in these here, you'll see the license changing, bringing up the symbols that represent the different kinds of licenses. And then as you go to the next step below this on their webpage, it will produce the graphic and the text that you can copy and paste into your work to go along with your work to tell others what permissions they have. If it's a web page, There's code here for it that provides the hyperlinks. It's pretty simple. It's pretty cool to have other people use your work. So, a little review. Intellectual property. Our creative works, yours and mine, are protected by law. When created, only the author or the creator has all rights. No one else can use it in any way, unless permissions are granted or exceptions or limits are followed according to the law. Because that's what copyright defines. How we can use other people's work, what rights, what responsibilities, what limitations. Fair use is an exception, often used in education, but there is a test, a 4-point test that you would have to use to prove, if you happen in front of a judge or in front of the author themselves, that you had used it for fair use. I like the transformative exception. Getting our students to produce, to create, to mix, that's good. That's high Bloom's taxonomy stuff. And it should be the goal of our classrooms, not just to reuse information, but to transform it. And finally, Creative Commons. What a great option we have now for licenses that are easily attached and easily understood to tell us what responsibilities we have, what rights do we have, what permissions have been granted by the creator or the author. Something in between copyrights, all rights reserved, and public domain. Something that encourages use, but not just equal use, but transformative use.